this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Welcome to One Thing Trump Did, available exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and each week on this show, we pick just one thing coming out of the Trump White House to focus on it and break it down in a nonpartisan way with someone who knows what they are talking about. And today, we're talking about the Trump administration's plans to revoke the temporary protected status from a number of immigrants around the United States. Now, if you're not aware, Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, is a program that allows nationals of select countries to come to the United States without the threat of deportation for a limited time. It was enacted by Congress in 1990 and lets people coming from countries where catastrophic events like war or famine or natural disasters have occurred to stay and work in the U.S. But earlier this year, the Trump administration announced that it will revoke this status from several countries: Haiti, Venezuela, Afghanistan, Cameroon, Honduras, and Nicaragua. That affects hundreds of thousands of people, some of whom have been in this country legally for decades. Here is the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem talking about why the administration wants to now send them back.
This program has been abused and manipulated by the Biden administration, and that will no longer be allowed to allow that and these extensions going forward the way that they are. The program was intended to be temporary, and this extension of over 600,000 Venezuelans as well is alarming when you look at what we've seen in different states, including Colorado, with gangs doing damage and harming the individuals and the people that live there.
Well, joining me now is CBS immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, welcome to One Thing Trump Did.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start with the basics for our listeners who are not familiar. How does TPS work, and how many people are eligible for it at the moment pre these cancellations by the Trump administration?
Sure. So TPS, Temporary Protected Status, was created by Congress back in 1990, and it effectively allows the Department of Homeland Security to grant certain immigrants a temporary safe haven in the form of work permits and deportation protections to people, again, who come from countries experiencing a crisis like a war or an environmental disaster that makes it dangerous to return people to those nations. And under Republican and Democratic presidents alike, the Department of Homeland Security has used that program to grant legal status to hundreds of thousands of people in the US. It doesn't actually allow people to come into the US, but it does grant immigration legal status to people already in the country, living here, sometimes unlawfully or on temporary visas. And the Biden administration really expanded the scope of TPS to an unprecedented degree, granting it to people from Venezuela, Haiti, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and other crisis-stricken countries. But the Trump administration, as part of its immigration crackdown, has really sought to scale back the use of TPS and has moved to dismantle TPS programs for a number of countries, including Afghanistan, Cameroon, Nepal, Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti. And that will place hundreds of thousands of people at risk of deportation if the courts allow these terminations to take place.
And when you talk about the Biden administration dramatically expanding it, they've more than doubled the amount of people who had access to TPS. Just the Venezuelans alone is hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. But the reasons for those protections being extended to Venezuelans, let's talk about them, was, quote, a complex humanitarian crisis marked by widespread hunger and malnutrition in Venezuela, a growing influence and presence of non-state armed groups, repression, and a crumbling infrastructure. Has any of that changed in Venezuela in the last 6 months?
Well, Venezuela is still in deep political and economic crisis. That country has seen a massive exodus of millions of its citizens, not only to the US, but to places like Colombia, Peru, Brazil, and South America. And the reason for that exodus has been the repressive government of President Nicolas Maduro, but also the economic collapse of that country over the past decade or so. Some conditions have improved in Venezuela, but the country is still in crisis by all accounts, and many people are still in exile in those countries that I mentioned and in the US. But what the Trump administration is arguing in federal court is that even if conditions in Venezuela and the other countries that I mentioned are still dire and in many cases dangerous, it is not in the national interest of the US to continue these programs because the administration, Jeremy, argues that these programs incentivize illegal immigration and that they have been in place for far too long, despite the temporary nature of, again, temporary protective status.
Similarly, Haitians have been given TPS
Yes.
on and off since 2010. And when I look back, it's like every year, every 2 years, they extend it, then they don't extend it, then they extend it again. There are hundreds of thousands of Haitians
Yes.
living in the United States because of that. Are they really all expected to leave?
Well, that is the Trump administration's position. They are telling Haitians and the other TPS holders who are set to lose their deportation protections that they should be self-deporting from the country using a government smartphone app rather that the administration has created known as CBP Home to register for self-deportation. Otherwise, the administration is warning Haitians and other TPS holders that they will be found, arrested, and forcibly deported from the country if they remain here unlawfully. Because once they lose that TPS protection, they will become illegally present in the country and will lose their ability to work and live here legally.
Is there rhyme or reason, as you can tell, to why certain nationalities are being revoked versus others?
It's a good question. In the case of Haiti and Venezuela, the administration says that those programs in particular have incentivized illegal immigration, and they have cited the very large numbers of people from those countries that have crossed into the U.S. illegally, mostly under the Biden administration in recent years. And they have said, essentially in court, that the Biden administration rewarded those people who enter the country illegally by extending TPS to them and to their countrymen. The case of Afghanistan is very interesting because, by all accounts, conditions in Afghanistan are still dire. The Taliban has a repressive record of ruling that country. Many minority groups are still oppressed in Afghanistan, including women, and conditions in that country remain really dire since the U.S. military withdrawal from that country. But in court, the administration has argued, Jeremy, that it is still not in the national interest to keep this program because they believe that TPS has been abused by Democratic administrations and that it should be discontinued. I should underscore that some TPS programs remain in place and have been left intact by the current administration, including the TPS program for Ukrainians who fled the Russian invasion of their homeland back in 2022.
Yeah. I noticed, by the way, that El Salvadorians are not losing their TPS status, at least not right now. El Salvador, our listeners may remember, is the country that has that notorious prison that the U.S. has been sending migrants to. And the president of El Salvador has become kind of a friend of President Trump, it seems.
The El Salvador TPS program is going to be a really interesting case study, Jeremy, because while the administration has moved to dismantle TPS programs across the board, really, it has kept that program for El Salvador for the time being. It now allows hundreds of thousands of migrants from that Central American country to live and work here legally. Many have been here for decades in the U.S., working and contributing to this country. But it has not ended that program yet. And the speculation, at the very least, is that the administration is keeping that program alive for now because it wants to maintain a good relationship with the government of President Bukele, as you mentioned. That country has allowed the Trump administration to send Venezuelan detainees to that maximum security prison that you mentioned, and has also vowed to accept other third country deportations from the U.S. So it's going to be a really interesting case study to track because it could be the collision between the administration's aggressive immigration goals, but also diplomatic realities in that country.
Well, stay with us because in a moment we're going to talk about what this is going to mean across the United States. There are a lot of people who may have to leave the U.S. One thing Trump did with CBS immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. We'll be right back.
Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to One Thing Trump Did exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This episode, we're talking about the Trump administration's move to remove the temporary protective status from a number of immigrant groups currently residing in the United States. I am joined by CBS immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, what can you tell us about how all this is affecting real people who are living in this country with TPS right now?
Well, if we look at the TPS programs for Honduras and Nicaragua, for example, those policies were created back in 1999. So the people who are covered under those policies have been living in the U.S. for more than 20 years, since the late 1990s. And now the government is telling them that they have to pack their bags, essentially, and they have to self-deport. Otherwise, they could be at risk of deportation. And so it has profound impacts for people who have been living in the U.S., many of them without any criminal record for years, if not decades, but it also impacts their employers and the companies that are currently employing people with TPS, because once that TPS protection expires or lapses, those people will lose their ability to work in the U.S. legally and will have to either self-deport or potentially go into the underground economy and work in the U.S. illegally. So it has repercussions not only on the actual TPS holders, but also on the broader U.S. economy and society, really.
Yeah, I have to think about even a city like Miami, which has a neighborhood for almost every one of the countries that we've talked about. There's a little Haiti. I'm sure there's a little Nicaragua. I mean, these places are going to be dramatically affected if so many people who've lived here for so long have to leave.
Well, Jeremy, it's going to have repercussions not just on the TPS holders who are going to lose their deportation protections and work permits, but also on their families and their employers, because once they lose that ability to work in the U.S. lawfully, their employers would be breaking the law if they continue to employ them and would have to fire them and let them go. And these people would have to effectively face that option of self-deporting or staying here illegally, maybe start working in the underground economy illegally, but with that looming threat of potentially being arrested by ICE and then deported from the country. And it would affect communities, yes, like Miami. It would also affect places like Springfield, Ohio, which has seen thousands of Haitian migrants settle there in recent years, mostly under the Biden administration and mostly under that TPS program or that CH&V policy under the Biden administration. If all those Haitians lose their legal status, that community will have serious challenges in looking for labor in many industries. And so it will affect the TPS holders, yes, and their families, but also the communities that have received them and the employers who are now relying on their labor too.
Now, Secretary Noem says that people who are about to lose their TPS protections can still apply for asylum. But are they likely to get it from this administration?
Well, the secretary is correct that anyone who is here on American soil, generally speaking, can request asylum as a way to stop their deportation to their home country. But it is a very high legal threshold to meet. You have to prove that you are fleeing well-founded persecution based on your race, nationality, religion, or other factors like membership in a social group to be able to get asylum. And again, most people who apply for asylum in immigration court or in front of a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services officer do not actually qualify for that protection because of those stringent requirements. And so many of these people will not be able to prove that they are eligible for asylum. Some will, and some have already applied for asylum. And also some have gotten green cards or permanent residency through other means because they have family members who are U.S. citizens rather, or employers who are willing to sponsor them, and they have gotten green cards too. And in the case of Cubans, they actually qualify for a green card under a Cold War era law for Cuban exiles. So some of these people will have other avenues to remain in the country legally, but many will not and will have to face that option of self-deporting or staying here illegally without the ability to work here lawfully and under threat of being deported by ICE officials.
Meanwhile, there is a lot going on in the courts with this right now. It made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. What's going on with some of this being held up in the courts?
Sure. So the Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to end the TPS protections for more than 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. They have already lost their legal status. And if they did not have another immigration status like asylum or a green card, now they are eligible for deportation. So some federal courts have blocked the administration's efforts to end TPS programs for other nationals. Just recently, a federal judge in California delayed the administration's effort to end TPS for people from Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And the ruling was really striking. The judge argued in her opinion that the administration's decision to end TPS for these countries was preordained and not based on country conditions in those nations that continue to linger, and that it was motivated by racial animus. And she said that the secretary had made derogatory comments about these migrants, linking them with criminality unfairly, in her opinion. And so this will be a really interesting case to see litigated in the courts. But for now, the administration is being allowed to end TPS for Venezuelans, but so far it's been blocked for the time being from ending the other programs.
Camilo, I know this is like a crazy beat to be on right now, immigration, and there's a lot going on, and you are so knowledgeable about so much of it. Let me ask you something else, just in case you're in touch with what's happening here. Are the home countries prepared to accept these citizens back?
It's a good question. I think it depends on the home country we're talking about. Venezuela, as we mentioned, is still in deep political and economic crisis, but it has been accepting greater numbers of Venezuelan deportees from the U.S. under the Trump administration, which has threatened to impose more sanctions on that country. Or it also has made prisoner swaps with the U.S. To exchange prisoners, including the Venezuelan detainees previously detained at that maximum security prison in El Salvador. They were exchanged for a group of Americans who had been wrongfully detained in Venezuela. In the case of Haiti, that country is still in deep social and political crisis. Gangs are running rampant in that country still. It is still the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Political instability there continues. And so it is very much an open question whether Haiti can integrate these deportees back into Haitian society so they can contribute to the country and not be forced to flee again to a different country or to the US. So it really depends on the country. I think some countries like Honduras and maybe Nicaragua are a little bit more well equipped to accept returns of their nationals, but it really does depend on the country.
So what's the next thing that you're watching for? There are a lot of deadlines coming up.
I think it's going to be really important to track whether the Supreme Court allows the administration to end the TPS protections for people from Afghanistan, Cameroon, Nepal, Honduras, Nicaragua, and other countries, just like the court did with Venezuelan migrants. And I think the answer is likely to be yes, because the Supreme Court has given the Trump administration a lot of deference on this issue, especially when it comes to TPS and temporary legal programs, because it is true that under US law, any executive branch has the authority not only to create TPS programs, but also to end them. And so the administration believes that it has very strong legal grounds on these TPS terminations and believes that it will ultimately prevail in court. We'll see what happens.
Bigger picture here, beyond the legal questions, is the United States done offering a helping hand to people in need around the world if they basically get rid of TPS, which is, I mean, maybe they leave it for a few countries, but they're essentially getting rid of it the way that it's been used for the last several decades?
I think the bottom line, Jeremy, is that the large-scale use of TPS will be discontinued under this administration, and only a few countries with active war zones like Syria and Ukraine, maybe Sudan, will continue to have these protections. Other countries will likely lose them, and I do think the Supreme Court will allow the other TPS terminations to take effect. Now, whether the U.S. remains a safe haven for people fleeing violence and persecution is also a matter that has to do with programs like the refugee process and asylum. The administration has tried to curtail access to asylum along the U.S.-Mexico border under the premise that the U.S. is facing an invasion. That policy is still in place, and it is blocking most people who are crossing the border from Mexico from seeking asylum. The administration has also effectively shuttered the U.S. refugee program, which allows people who are vetted overseas to come here legally if they prove that they have been fleeing persecution based on those factors that I mentioned earlier, the religion, race, or other grounds. Except in the case of white Afrikaner refugees from South Africa, the administration has made an exemption from for that population, and has allowed some of them to come here from South Africa and be resettled in U.S. communities across the country. So I think it depends on the country, the migrant population, but I think what you are certainly seeing is a dramatic scaling back in humanitarian immigration programs that this administration believes have been abused for far too long.
That is Camilo Montoya-Galvez, who covers immigration for CBS News. Camilo, so interesting. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this information with us.
Sure, of course. Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening to One Thing Trump Did. It was produced by Harrison Patino. Our next middle episode is coming to your podcast feed later this week. We're going to be talking about what a reindustrialized America, which President Trump says he wants to create, would actually look like. Is it possible in an age of AI and cheap overseas labor? And if you like this podcast, please rate it wherever you get your podcasts and write a review. Our theme music was composed by Noah Haidu. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you soon.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature, and trees, and praying, and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.